a bunch of people mentioned on yesterday's video, and I forgot to mention it in the video, but as far as the hedge trimmers go, I did grease them. A lot of people mentioned make sure you grease, put grease in the gearbox for the grease fittings for these. Let me show you real quick. That right there just unscrews, and that's where you pump the grease in. And this does have to be greased from time to time to keep the gear in there and all of the parts inside greased. So I did pull that off, and there was like almost no grease in there, so I did grease that. But a lot of people had mentioned, here's just another upside down view. This is that groove, that slot the cable runs in, but that is ultimately the reason why these weren't moving, is because this cable was off there. So when you squeeze the trigger, the cable was just dangling. It wasn't pulling tight to make these move, and that was ultimately the problem with why the blades wouldn't move. But yes, that is very important. You do have to put grease in there, and I did do that. I just never mentioned it in yesterday's video.
I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.
Okay, so I get asked a lot about used mowers, and a lot of people ask me, you know, what do I recommend? What should I get? And this comes right back to, first off, you got to know what cuts best in your area. What does very well in your area? What's not going to do well in your area? You know, regardless of the manufacturer of that mower, it all comes down to the deck and the deck design. There are some mowers that are just built like tanks. They're just absolute beasts, but can't cut for shit. So, and a prime example, and I don't mean, guys, you know, people have been giving me a lot of crap for this, and I don't mean to keep bashing on Wright, but it's just been my most recent experience as far as how mowers work out. And I think that machine, I think all of Wright's machines are absolute tanks. I think they're phenomenal mowers, but they just cut like shit in my area. Now, I know a lot of other guys that run them in other states, and they haven't found a mower yet that can beat it. Like I said, different area. But let's talk about used mowers, okay? I have nothing against buying used mowers. As you guys know, I've bought so many of them over the years. I've redone them, I've fixed them, I've, you know, so on and so forth, like I just did with that Toro. But here's what I can tell you with used mowers. First and foremost, and some people might disagree with me, and that's fine. This is just my opinion on it with my experience. First and foremost, I want to make sure that engine is completely sound. I want to make sure there's nothing wrong with that engine. If anything at all, maybe it needs plugs or maybe it needs a carburetor. Those two things are cheap, and it's an easy fix. But other than that, I want that engine to be sound. To me, that's the most important part. You know, spindles, if it's a belt-driven deck, you know, they can get pricey, but you can always get good deals. Almost any mower I've ever owned, walk behind, a sit-down zero-turn, a stander, you can find spindles on eBay and get like a 3-pack of them for $150 or less for almost every mower. They're not OEM, but they do the job and they'll get you through. I've bought them before and gone 3-4 seasons on them, okay? So, but I've also bought them and only gotten a year out of them. Either way, you can always get a deal. That's not real high-end expense. Hydro pumps and hydro motors, that's another very big thing. But again, you know, if you got a hydro pump or a hydro motor going down, you can get, maybe not OEM, but you can get one for, you know, $500 to $700 on average, and you can fix that issue and down the road you go. Okay, now the two most important things I would say would be engine and hydros. Those would be your biggest expenses. But at the same time, if I drove one around and I noticed the hydro pump was leaking or felt a little sluggish going one way or the other, I knew one of the hydro pumps or hydro mowers was going bad. If I got the mower for the right price, I would still probably buy that machine, because they're not hard to change out. They're all pretty easy. They're easy to bleed out. There's a million videos on YouTube on how to bleed out hydro systems on almost every mower there is, and they're all pretty much the same, the steps on doing it. But you know, that's under $1,000 and you're down the road. An engine, you know, you're anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 depending on the engine, and I'm sure some can go more than that, but that's a big expense. So like, I bought that Toro Grand Slam. was like $1,000 that I bought that for, and I put maybe, I don't know, another 1,000 into it, if that. I think less. I think I actually put like $700-800 into it. So for under $2,000, I have a 52-inch stander that runs phenomenal, and that was the biggest thing when I checked it. I went there, I knew it needed a new pad for the platform. I knew that it had a carb issue, it was leaking, that I had to change the carb. I knew it needed new rubber grips for the handles. I knew it desperately needed tires, they were bald. That's all minor stuff. So there's nowhere I'm gonna go and buy a 52-inch Toro grandstand that runs that good and drives that good for that kind of money. So there's always going to be, when you buy a used machine, a lot of times people say you're buying somebody else's headaches, and in a lot of aspects you are, but a lot of times you'll come across something like I did with that Toro grandstand, or with the used, both the Great Danes that I had redone. I barely had any money into them, and I got every one of those machines for like $1,500 or less. So, you know, you put $1,000 or less into it, for $2,000 or less, you have a great mower that's going to make you a shit ton of money. So, I mean, that Toro grandstand will pay for itself in the first month of mowing this spring coming up. So, you know, it's not a big deal at all. But if you don't have the money to go buy a brand new unit, then, you know, that's something that you really might want to look into, or have no choice but to look into, is a used mower. So if you're not very well mechanically inclined, I'm not so sure I would buy a used one, because if you buy it and you know it has issues and you send it to a dealer, you're going to pay out the ass to have them fix all the little things that are wrong with it. You're going to pay, well, say you got a certain part for it that it needs, and the part is $25. They're automatically doubling that part. So they're automatically charging you $50 to put it in. Their shop rate's going to be anywhere from $65 to $100 an hour. So a $25 part that could have taken you 15 minutes to change, you're going to pay, you know, say anywhere between $125 and $150 between purchasing that part from them and having them put it in. So that can all add up really quick. So my recommendation is, yes, if you can find the right deal and you can get a really good price on that machine, knowing you're going to have to put a little bit of money and time into it, then I would say yes, it's definitely worth buying used equipment. It can make you a lot of money for very little expense. But I would highly recommend to somebody that if you're not mechanically inclined, or if you are and you don't have the tools or the shop to do it, you do have the know-how but you don't have what it takes to do it, or the place to do it, then I would probably shy away from buying used equipment. If you have somebody that can do all this stuff for you, like a buddy of yours, or he has a shop and you can do it all in his shop, then still it's a good idea. But sometimes it's just worth buying new. I bought the Walker B brand new, I bought the Skag Tiger Cat brand new, I bought the Skag Freedom Z brand new, and I bought the Right Stander brand new. But those were just, you know, I got a really good deal at the time, and I bought brand new machines. But I've built my business up to a place where I can do it. When I first started off, just like anybody else, no way, there's no way I had the money to buy brand new equipment, and there's no way I was going to start off my first couple of years in business by being in debt with payments. To me, that's just astronomically stupid, and a lot of guys do it, and I know they do. They start off a business, they run right out, and you know, they got 2 or 3 mowers at $250, $300 a payment, whatever it is on there, and they're not making any money. I bought all used equipment and I fixed it all myself, and that's the only way. A lot of guys say you're 4 or 5 years into business before you start making a profit. By the end of the first year, I mean, it took almost the whole first year, but by the end of the first year, I was already making a profit. I was profitable my first year in business, and that's because I bought used equipment with money I had and put a little bit of money and time into them, and use those machines to just continuously make me money. So, you know, by the time I recouped the money I spent, I was already making a profit that first year. So it is doable. You can make profit your first year. That's probably the biggest way to do it, is to not sink yourself in payments on a new machine. But yes, I do recommend buying used equipment if that's the position you're in. I wouldn't shy away, but you got to take all those things I just said into account.